NERDSoul.
Yeah, that's right. Lay ill kid at OneYoungsta holding it down, bringing that street geek and nerd soul. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. Let's go, cause we got Loki to talk about, y'all. That's right, season 2. All it done came to a close. Now you best believe that, and I ain't by myself. All right, I got right here the man of the hour. You know what I'm saying? A tower of power. Gift. What's up, man?
Yo, what's really good, Nerd Soul? Brother, I am always appreciative to be able to be on your platform and let's talk about some Marvel because in these days, all right, I need to sit back and help continue to defend this power and empire known as the MCU as it is getting hit from all sides from all the enemies. All right,
Man, look, we ain't even gonna go there. Sometimes I be thinking a lot of this stuff is cap, like but we ain't gonna get into that. You know what? Matter of fact, I'll throw it to you real quick because you said you had to defend. How you feeling about the defense of the MCU? What's going on with the MCU for you?
Look, I will say this. I understand the sentiments of where people say that it has been underwhelming. But I will say this, and I remember saying this before in another podcast we talked about, that I said this was a time of transition, particularly because the pandemic created a different subset of perception of how movies were going to be made, especially because nobody knew what was going to happen and we had so many delays. And then it also was a moment where the MCU was trying to test, or Disney as a whole was trying to test different ways of being able to present characters for new audiences to be able to bring them in. So I think the mixture of the two, trying to create a whole lot while trying to give an opportunity to others as well, kind of made a lot of things a little bit more undercooked. For me, I think I won't lie, my breaking point was a little bit that last episode of Secret Invasion. So that was where it was like, I can't defend it strong, but everything else, I was pretty good with. But that one hurt me a little bit. So getting a chance to talk about Loki, which I think could easily become what Guardians of the Galaxy was for all the MCU movies following afterwards, is what I feel like all the shows, and clearly they're kind of shifting towards that, will be in of that vein moving forward.
Okay. I see where you coming from. So all right, I won't go no further because the MCU talk, I don't know. I guess it's gotten on my nerve, and not meaning MCU talk as far as the projects. That's cool, but it just seems like it's been a pile-on of like, if you hate Marvel, it's time for you to speak up. Which I mean, I get it. It's just that since it's all over my timeline, I'm just generally tired of it. But I mean, I get it. I understand people being upset with what they're getting. I'm getting it's everywhere, man. So I can't take no more.
It's literally the version of trying to actually kick the lion while it's down, because now you finally have an opportunity to do it. And it's like, yo, that lion, once it gets that thorn out of its paw, it's coming back up. And I think Loki was the beginning of moving that thorn out. So
let's talk about Loki. In the finale, when it finished, what was your first, like, I guess you could say, feeling, emotion, when you came off of that final frame, seeing him on the throne?
I'm not gonna lie, like it reminded me of whenever the arc of who was it? I used to always say that the arc of Captain America was the number one total arc for the MCU. Then I think it became Thor, and I think that one hit the strongest for me after, particularly Ragnarok. We're not even going to pretend to talk about Love and Thunder, but Ragnarok come to the end, and really the beginning of Infinity War, wherever like all culminated together with Endgame and stuff like that. But I think this Loki one actually now takes the top one, because not only is we had two legitimately great arcs for Loki. Do you know how difficult it is to have two arcs for Loki? So the ending of this one, to be able to get, in contrast to the brutal ending in Infinity War, to like this tragic but heroic moment for Loki to put it all together, and just the last two episodes really hitting it. I got legitimately emotional. It's been a while since I've been legitimately emotional about the outcomes of the MCU probably since maybe WandaVision, give or take.
Okay.
And so it was like, oh man, you guys did this. This is him, to say the least. And yeah, I mean, they talked about it so much before, but I really didn't expect them to go the direction that they did with it. And honestly, it was two emotions. It was that feeling of emotion of satisfaction and sadness, but the other one was like absolute relief that we did not get a same power versus same power CGI showdown.
There we go. I see where you're coming from.
I was like, you guys allow the director and the storyline to just mature and just be what it should be. Nothing traditional, nothing expected, but everything meaningful. Oh God. I loved it.
So I'm right there with you. I really, when the season, or when the episode ended and the season ended, I was just like, wow, this changes a lot. And this is a big deal for Loki. I was just thinking, wow, this is a big deal for Loki. Like, as far as his path, wow. Like, okay, Loki, all right, okay, good show. And it goes to show, well, the beauty of this season is also what kind of rubs me the wrong way about other Marvel shows, because it clearly lets you know that they can do dope stuff, they don't want to do dope stuff, or you can clearly see like they microwaved everything but this. And so then it kind of upset me, because I was like, so y'all could have been giving us this same quality with everything else. But I do know that there's factors around that. People were rushing them, this, that, and the third. But as far as finishing Loki, I really dug it. I thought this season was extremely well done. And the way they played with time, and the way he kept like sort of jumping into his former selves and stuff, we'll get to later. But I just thought it was awesome how they showed that circle of time and cycle of time, the road that was paved and then stepping into the unpaved area and then breaking the cycle. All this stuff is awesome. And then it sets him in a place where we see a whole new man. This is a man that isn't selfish. This is the man who was pitied by his mother when she saw him in jail. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because when we saw him in jail, we were like, why is she going to see him? Who cares? You know what I'm saying? This dude tried to kill his daddy. What are you talking about? But now we see, she could see what he could be. Like this is what he could be.
Right. That was exactly why I said, like, the fact that we got these two versions of Loki that ended in, while kind of opposite, but also similar ways, they ended in ways where both the people closest to them could see the potential of what he really could be. And he had to lose, in a way, those people, or his connection to those people, for him to finally reach the level of subsequent glorious purpose that he needed to. Whether it was against Thanos, saving his brother and dying for real, which was still embedded into my mind, burned into my mind forever. And then to now be able to say, I will sacrifice the one thing that I wanted and the thing I was most afraid about now in being alone, but because I know I can save my friends, I will go and take this burden and truly be who he was supposed to be. Like, it like you said, it speaks very highly to the fact that when people say Marvel lost it, it's like, I don't ever believe that Marvel lost it. But like you said, other things had to happen. But knowing that they can, and it's not under a James Gunn, angle that gives us the risque. It's legitimately a well-written, philosophically written, physics-laden, like, complex but also very direct story that while again not directly related, it makes me even more angrier about what happened with Love and Thunder, because this could easily have been Thor and Loki take their thrones respectively for their respective sides, and that would have been, I think, easily the two best character arcs that the MCU had put together thoroughly.
Yeah,
because,
and in keeping with the conversation about sacrifice, Loki has sacrificed himself twice now.
Right.
Because Loki in Infinity War. In Infinity War, he sacrificed himself to save his brother. Basically, like, look, I'm going to make sure that because I've changed, I've seen some things, and now I'm starting to feel a different way. And I know even though I might not like this or like that, I definitely don't want what Thanos is doing to come to pass. And him sacrificing himself willingly, like he could have like ran or got away or something like that, but he willingly sacrificed himself. And then sacrificing himself again here, and at first it was sacrificing to essentially kind of protect or throw a wrench into Thanos's plans, and now he's sacrificing himself in service to basically the known multiverse, basically.
Right.
And that's just something that when you look at the character at its beginning, someone who was essentially just wanted to subjugate the whole planet, he's come a long way. He's come a real long way.
Yo, look, it was always, I'm not gonna lie, it always kind of annoyed me in the past, like how much people would big up Loki for the short little stuff that he did, like, sexiest man, Loki's so funny. And I was like, okay, he's all right, but like he's so generically villainous. In the first one, like Avengers and Thor 1, it was like in Thor 2 to some extent, it was like, okay, he's generically villainous and he's just trying to get the throne. So it very was a A-B kind of characteristic. But like you said, it wasn't until late, Thor 3, and then obviously Infinity War, and then what we got from Loki season 1, like it now made me be like, okay, this is who they've been seeing that I'm not seeing. Because this person that we have here could be the villain, but he's like rambunctious, but he's also like not so much the hero, that it just feels like it was just a complete separation of his own character. It really did feel like the lost child who literally was looking for a family and identity again. And I think especially for people who have teenagers and our parents, like, and those, whenever we were kids as well too, you have that little refreshing run of the teenage years where you're trying to figure out who you are, and it's just a battle constantly. Like, so this, like, I don't know if it was purpose, but almost allegory of puberty in a sense, to get to this end where you reach grown folk men. This is grown Loki. This is mature. This is a grown freaking man right now, and he's doing grown man decisions, and we are seeing the impact and what it really means to be a hero. All I can say is, like,
because he found a way. He found a way. And the trip is, Kang is like, so how many times have you been back here? Kang's like, so many times have you been back here? Because he knows time the way that Loki is beginning to learn time now. So he's like, so how many times have we had this conversation? What, 50, 100, how many times? Like, it was very arrogant. And in a heroic way, Loki said, you know what? I'm going to find a way. It's similar where, like Captain America, what I'm saying? He doesn't leave anyone behind, like that kind of attitude. And
exactly.
You couldn't tell me back in Avengers 1 or in Thor that Loki was going to be basically on some Captain America stuff, like, no, I'm not going to kill Sylvie. I'm not going to let everyone die. I'm going to figure out a way to do it and save everyone. Like, that is a huge deal. That's the kind of character arcs that we enjoy and that we live for. Like, whether it's Iron Man and his character arc, or now Loki in his, or even seeing Captain America in his, like seeing how he was able to finally have his time with Peggy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Even though I think he probably really screwed up time with that, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I mean,
in saying that, I want to throw it to you about time. How do you think time was handled in this show, or well, I guess in this show as a whole, but in this season as well?
In this season, man, it's really interesting because it's still a little confusing to some extent, and I like that they still, like with Ouroboros, kind of put the idea of, is this fiction or is this fact? Because if it's fact, then we need to know what. But if it's fiction, we need to know why. So the bouncing back of time in the TVA, where time is not supposed to exist, but also does, was a little bit throwing, because every time else, you could at least say, whenever time gets redone, it creates a branch elsewhere. So to not have one for the TVA was a touch bit confusing for me. But I mean, I think it was solid. I would have liked to have seen how messing with the TVA being outside of time, but still within the concept, would have affected also that timeline in some way, shape, or form, because it would have made all these connections make a little bit more sense. But for the sake of lack of complexity, I mean, I get why they did what they did. So I'm glad they used it as a method to allow Loki to do what he did. But I still was a little confused exactly how it all fit. And especially utilizing, like, when he was time jumping, like the moments where he can time jump into his body versus time jump outside of his body in the same time. I don't know if
they kind of just flew by that. It was kind of like, look, don't ask, just go along with the story.
Exactly. And again, I'm okay with it, but considering the level of complexity that they were talking about on some of this stuff, I would have liked some level of an explanation. But again, it wasn't something that was needed, but I felt would have cleared up some of the issues.
Man, I agree. There were a couple of scenes that I had to like rewind and be like, hold on. And then watching the finale again, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So because Kang's conversation really helped me out. Like, okay, so the paved road was all the Groundhog's Day type stuff.
Right.
And then the extra stuff was him kind of stepping out of that. So I was like, okay, cool. So now there's still some stuff that I didn't fully grasp, but I kind of get the gist of it. I'm like, okay, so when he's jumping into himself, I believe that's all the paved road stuff. Okay. I think. And then him jumping kind of sort of outside of himself was all the stuff where he's making brand new decisions. I think. Now I'm sure there's someone else that maybe be able to come in the comments and break it down, the minute and the time code and everything, but that's how I sort of understood it to go. And the way they wrapped it around in a very cool Groundhog's Day sort of fresh look at the MCU, and as well as a fresh look at the emotions of Loki and his character continuing to evolve from season 1. It's like, whoa, hold up. Because remember, old Loki sacrificed himself for his brother. He died a hero.
Right.
New Loki, the Loki we know now, is the Loki that was taken after Avengers 1. So he was still the arrogant, butthole Loki.
Right.
So now seeing him, I guess it's always maybe, I don't know if there's a mutant character called Destiny. So maybe it's always destiny or destined for him to become a hero in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And
I mean, again,
it also sets up like some Secret Wars type stuff too.
Right. I mean, it makes sense, and it makes sense. Even the other thing that we have to also remember is the fact that not only is that Loki, obviously the 2012 one, and it's arrogant and the road, but the Loki that we have now is actually significantly older. And I think that plays into the old man King Loki idea, which plays to what is off the paved road kind of idea. Like it's the destiny of being the hero, but almost like how many experiences would have needed to be had to get to that point. Does that make sense?
I feel you. Like especially when it comes to the different relationships and stuff too.
Right. You know, it's like, how long does this actually take for a Loki to get past their own Lokiism?
Because even Sylvie got to the point where she was like, look, you got to do what you got to do, kind of thing. You know, it was definitely a moment where even she was just like, yo, you got to do what you got to do, kind of thing. But I'll switch the game up a little bit and ask you, outside of Loki, who's your MVP for this show? Because I'm assuming we're not getting a season 3. I'm assuming this is going to lead us into like Kang Dynasty type stuff. So I'm assuming we're not getting a season 3.
So from what is said on X, it seemed like Tom Hiddleston said like this was the culmination of 14 years of work finally coming to an end. So I'm like now wondering, like, are we getting Loki back in any significant form? Again, I'm definitely clearly not getting a season 3, but you know, are we gonna get Loki again? Because I want to see what he adds, obviously with Secret Wars. But to the fact of who's my other MVP, I mean, I think it's definitely man, it's a tie. Man, it's truly a tie for me between Ouroboros and Mobius. With actually, and this one would be a slight surprise, was the special mention to B15.
Yeah, B15. That's probably going to be mine. But go ahead, drop your knowledge.
So I think with Ouroboros, I think Mobius feels like the most obvious because of how significant he was for Loki's development.
Yeah.
But I feel like Ouroboros actually was telling us the story of exactly what was needed, especially whenever we saw him as a failed physicist turned fiction writer. And the fact that like he is the same person regardless of whether he was in the TVA or in his timeline. And the fact that he was actually probably able to give us a little bit better, maybe not better, but a simpler explanation of what it was that was going on with Loki prior to He Who Remains kind of entering into the picture. His awkwardness kind of set a standard of like, yo, this, you need to take it seriously, but you also got to recognize you got to filter through the goofiness to read the information that's really actually in front of you. So Ouroboros gets probably more of my lean than Mobius does overall, but yeah. But like I said, B15 special mention with ease.
Yeah, I'll roll because I feel you on the OB. OB is a trip, man. Especially that scene of him meeting Victor Timely, who I also dug, and we'll get into that in a second. But B15 going from pretty much the by the book, disciplinarian Terminator type of character, like, prune this, prune that, get out my way, prune this, prune that. She was definitely on some General Docs. What was her name? I can't remember.
The one that was trying to go in and go destroy the timelines again.
Yeah, I can't remember her name, but the general that was killed by Renslayer, and she really stood up and had her moment. But B15, her kind of, I guess, stepping into being sort of the heart of the TVA, because when they were pruning those timelines, and once it finally hit her that, hold up, these are all real people. Because at first when they were pruning, I guess many people were under the impression that these aren't like real people. These are people that were kind of just like, invented off of the timeline. Like they didn't really see them as actual people with feelings and all of that. So
it's almost like the same way that whenever they say they go to war and you don't actually call people by their name, you call them by nickname. So whenever they go like terrorist, insurgent, yada yada yada, it's like we need to find ways to not humanize them. But once you realize it, now it becomes legitimately more difficult to simply remove somebody off the earth simply because now they're no longer other, they're me of another form.
Yeah, especially finding out that we are all those same variants. See, like at first they were just variants that had to go. And then you realize, oh no, this sacred timeline stuff is not even real. It's something that was made up by He Who Remains because he, of course, wants to save his own skin. So her attitude changing, even with dealing with the general, where she could have just been like, okay, just prune these people. But her saying like, hey, I want to sit down and let's talk because I know we both love this place. How can we fix it? How can we make this work where we are doing what we thought we were doing all these years? It really hit me like, wow, okay, because I thought they were going to essentially sort of sideline her character this season. Because I was like, well, I guess we don't really need her anymore. Even the dude that turned into an actor, I was thinking most of those people would be sidelined too. But I mean, they ended up having semi relatable and very important roles.
Yes, which is impressive.
I couldn't be happier with that.
That goes back to the what was the name of the brothers that did Winter Soldier and
the Russo brothers.
The Russo brothers. It goes back to the Russo brothers' ability to type of style of utilizing multiple leads and actually making everybody seem significant to the movie. Like when the Russos left, I do think a part of that capability of juggling everybody kind of just went away with them. And in this show, this season, they did a magnificent job to the exact point that you said. Those characters that seem like they would typically just be side characters, that, they're just the face that we send to the side at some point, and if they die, they die. No, everybody felt to be even the general at the end. Even the general at the end, whenever they crushed, which was brutal, I was like, yo, maybe they weren't horrible people. They were just misguided. And that is how you do your villains. Everybody has nuance. There's always a gray, and the black and white should not feel so obvious. Even if but you should always know, like, the idea is wrong, but it shouldn't feel so black and white. That is significant writing right there. Yeah,
they really blew up on this one, and in a very good way. I'm gonna throw it to the two ladies that we get to spend a good amount of time with, which is Renslayer and Miss Minutes. When dealing with those two, how do you think that the show handled them? How are you feeling about them as characters? Do you want to see them again? I mean, I know we're seeing Miss Minutes again because we see, well, I mean, maybe not again, but we know we saw her back in her, I guess, original form before she got crazy. Right. But how do you feel about them throughout this show?
I feel like we still don't know much about Renslayer. Like, we know where she was, what she was to He Who Remains, and she's literally at the end of time. But now I'm like, but her story isn't complete. Like, I don't know whether she is a new villain or she is going to be a reformed anti-hero, or she's going to be like a significant player in something else. Like, that one I didn't like, where we got a lack of conclusion. I know that, there's a lot of storyline and the focus was on Loki, but like, dude, I don't even know, like, is she at the end of time still? Does that exist in the same way?
The way it looked, I'm guessing she was eaten by a Goliath, but we don't really know. I think that's something that they left ambiguous just in case they want to bring her back. You know how writers do. They're like, well, Gugu is a dope actress, and this character is cool and it is significant to Kang himself, so let's leave it just in case. That's probably what they did.
Look, I will never be mad with them bringing Gugu and Batha to as many productions as possible. That has been a crush for like 15 years.
Oh boy. No comment.
so in the past, before my marriage and my doors are closed, okay, I can still stay with it. But no, like I am good. I'm good with bringing, but I just wanted a little bit more to get a better feel for where she could be going. And then with the Miss Minute thing, I mean, the way that whenever that reboot haunted my nightmares for like 3 days. All right, that last scene right before she said, "You'll never be him."
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was terrifying.
I was absolutely like, terrifying. Miss Minutes, she's wildin'. I don't know, because she goes from, it's weird. She goes from like this sort of mothering figure to kind of like a jilted girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
To also sort of like an overprotective older sister. Like, it's weird how she flows in and out of those things with Victor Timely. Because I mean, of course, when she was with He Who Remains, that was a completely different relationship.
Exactly. And it's
weird seeing her.
If you didn't feel that AI could turn into a sociopath, like that is I think the fear that everybody has. It's not a Skynet. It's AI falling in love and then being very capable of destroying literally everything about you.
Like, I mean, think about it. With the way online bullying is now, a regular human can, ruin your life. Imagine someone who could just like go into, I guess like police records, bank records, education records, health records, do whatever they wanted. That could be dangerous. That could be really, really bad. I mean, of course, Skynet is bad too, but
but it's, again, Skynet is obvious. Oh, big war, shut it. Like we can see that. That's a black and white situation. No, not the one that can go in undercover and like shut everything down very covertly, and you can do almost nothing to stop it.
Yeah, because when she was shutting down she was shutting down the TemPads, I think.
Yeah.
She was just like, So yeah, she's crazy, and I mean they wrote her very well, and I can't remember the lady that does her voice, but man, look, kudos, because just the attitude in the voice really made Miss Minutes creepy and scary.
Yes.
Like, almost on some like like Hand That Rocks the Cradle type stuff. Just really weird and scary.
Right. No, and I think that was, again, a great depiction for Miss Minutes, a great setup for it. But I do feel like her arc is done. I feel like that one we legitimately got a conclusion for that one. So I can go to bed feeling like I don't feel like there's going to be a point where she's going to immediately turn or return back to her programming or something to that effect. Hopefully. I don't feel as strongly about it, but like, still, like,
that Renslayer is something else, though. I will say that Renslayer, that's something else that could be a problem later on, especially dealing with Kang. And I guess it's time to talk about the big bad, but also the big swerve, which is Kang, or of course, Victor Timely. Mm-hmm. When we saw the trailer for the new, season, we were like, "Oh man, Victor Timely, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be wow. What is he going to do? How is he going to handle himself? What is he going to do to the TVA?" And when we first meet him, we're like, "Hold up, so this dude is just a scammer?"
Yo, that's what it says.
He's a fraud, kind of.
His variants.
Yeah, it's like he's a fraud, sort of. Like, I mean, it wasn't that he wasn't smart, but he was definitely using his talents as sort of like a hustle instead of like really trying to, control the world or something like that.
Bro, let me tell you how I know that was an alternate timeline. Because the fact that Victor Timely made it out of that crowd scamming one of the wealthiest people in town and was not on a tree, I was like, okay, we in a different time zone. Everybody, this is some Lupin kind of timeline going on right now.
Yeah, he was. I was definitely surprised he was able to get away.
People were just like, "Stop that man!" I'm like, "Really?
Like you can't catch him. I mean, he's not extremely fast, though.
Right?
I mean, he's right there. Just stop him."
I was just like, "Hey, you know what? This is a progressive timeline. Everybody. Let's go. Let's go. Timeline. You might be a scammer, but hey."
It's like, look, man.
Probably on the more positive timeline that you needed to be on.
Yeah, and the good thing is he does come in handy to sort of, I guess, get Loki to where the He Who Remains wants him to be, because of course Miss Minute said he just told us to give him this book. You know, this is all we have to do to get him, and this was also part of the road that was paved. But you see Victor Timely essentially being sort of like part of the hero team.
Yeah.
Like you see him over there trying to create solutions. It definitely really turned everything on his head, because of course in our perception, and Sylvie's as well, is that, oh, this guy, he's evil. He's going to be evil. He's going to be bad. No matter what he does, he's going to be, trying to usurp power or whatever. And we find him, and just like Sylvie finds him, she's just like, oh, well, I think she said she saw like real fear in his eyes or something like that. And she saw that this is not this isn't the one that she's been trying to beat up and kill all of her life. This is just a completely different person. And I'm surprised that she didn't think of that earlier, because, just like there's infinite different versions of like yourself or Loki or whoever else, there's going to be some people that are just like, the Kang that just like, works at a call center, and that's it. Like,
right.
He might be super smart, but maybe life didn't work out for him. He got kicked out of, university or something, and that's it.
I think the idea though is that in every variant of a Kang, there's always that potential for the need to want to take over, and regardless of whatever their life plays out on the branch line. And I think in what we see is a really great way of exemplifying the factor of the point that you're making. Not only is it like their lives are a little bit different, but the Kangs are not inherently evil, but as anything goes, certain aspects of their life can lead them down a direction that sends them into that arena in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah, because we definitely see the Council of Kangs.
Right.
So we definitely see them. There's still, I don't know, hundreds of them, thousands of them that are, like evil and crazy. But then even out of them, it seemed like there was only like a top 3 or 4 that were really, I guess, capable of being really bad. Like from the 3 that we saw, and they remarked on the one that was in Ant-Man. So
right.
It was probably like maybe 4 that are like upper echelon Kang, know. And then you just have like all the crazy Kangs that want power, but they're not really that dope. They're just like, they're just murderous and crazy.
And that's I mean, I kind of like that, because one, we all know that the Nathaniel Richardson time storyline that's in the comics leading to Kang. And so like seeing all these variations of Kang initially, where you're just like, oh, you guys couldn't have come from something positive, regardless of how far down the timeline it is. So I don't really know how we're going to connect that with what happened in the comics, but with the Victor Timely kind of setup, and then knowing like you do have not just a branch, but you have these different personalities that would have made sense to now become what could be the ultimate Kang, to say the least, or who became He Who Remains eventually. Like now it makes a sense where it's like, oh, you came from this positive timeline, and then in your story you now arced into this villainy because you felt like the timeline is all jacked up, or the multiversal war, or whatever you want to call it. And it makes it feel like more settled in how we are going to get to that point versus like the black and white with Quantum Mania Kang or the, very, whatever side that we're getting with the Victor Timely. It's like, okay, I see a range here. And there's going to be someone in the middle that's going to be the one that does it all or will be the ultimate threat. I can appreciate that setup more because it makes the Kang variants, makes us underestimate them because we're like, oh, they can be beat, which makes it seem more likely for the ultimate Kang to take over because underestimated, the timeline and the story arc all work together to make this person absolutely potent. And then now you feel like you got another Thanos as opposed to just like every other villain of the week.
Yeah, and it seems like the key, well, at least from watching this final season, is the key is whichever Kang can get Miss Minutes and Renslayer on his side, or at least Renslayer, because I can't remember if Miss Minutes said she was there because they were talking about what happened to her, and she said, "Oh, so I did all the fighting, blah blah blah," and she said more or less, and I'm like, "Well, no, what is the more or less? Like, you can't just like what is the ingredients for this?" So
I think the idea with, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, I think the idea of that was he created Miss Minutes at the beginning. So she's been there through the various time loopings. So her existence has been part of the he who remains warring. But to be able to start the loop again, she has to be recreated at some point. She has to be created to be looped back. So it's like, I think it's the more or less that she's always been there and she hasn't been there simultaneously. Life outside the timeline kind of stuff.
All right, word. All right, well then, this is the time that I throw it to the other Loki that we have, Sylvie. We see Sylvie, she's just trying to get some McDonald's. How did you like her portrayal in this season?
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like this Sylvie this season. I liked first season Sylvie way better. Like, she felt like I understand feeling lost and wanting to establish yourself and wanting to just have a normal life. But like the Sylvie from the first season was like determined. She had a mission. She was lost, but she had a direction. And I thought at some point in time, we would be able to overcome the terribleness of her haircut to give us at least a purpose for where she was going to go.
Yeah, that haircut, man, this joint's still struggling.
Oh my God. Like, I was like, yo, how are you a party vomit in the front and the back simultaneously? Like,
bro, that joint, she had like she don't own a comb or a brush or nothing.
I don't even think she knew what the meaning of wash my hair was. But
it's just bad.
It was so bad. And so I thought that they would give us a story arc for Sylvie, especially on the back of like the possibility of a Loki falling in love with itself is the only way that it can love something, and really building on that to continue to progress the storyline of Loki, of our Loki himself. But she just became such a side character and just so pouty and just so, I felt like she was just in there because the fact that we had her last season, as opposed to her making the impact. I was disappointed with her outcome, to be honest with you.
Okay. For me, I will agree that she did seem lost, and she seemed almost, I guess, because since there was nothing else, I guess she just gave up, because that's how I kind of felt about her character. I felt like she was just like, all right, well, I guess this is it. I won. That's it. I did whatever I wanted to do, and now that's finished. And it just seemed like once she got that, she was just completely fine with, nothing ever happening again. And which I thought was kind of weird, but then I also sort of get it, I guess. I mean, I guess I get it, because it's like, okay, well, you've been around, you've figured out everything, you got everything that you wanted. So now you're just done. You don't need to do anything else. And anything that I guess Loki is doing is sort of kind of getting on your nerves, I guess.
Right.
So I mean, I guess because she's like, leave it alone. There's nothing wrong with it. And once she finds out that timelines are now like disappearing, that's when she's just like, oh, I guess I got to do something. But she's definitely she's very like critical through the whole thing. She's definitely not happy that Loki's trying to work with the TVA. But I do see where Loki's like, hey man, now that we know, it's tough to let all this stuff go and know that these people might disappear and like never ever exist again, kind of thing. So when it comes to this, I guess the Sylvie of it all, I agree. She just kind of was just like, I don't care anymore. She did give, when we got back to the moment with Kang, we did get a lot of that emotion back, because the new Sylvie is more like, hey, who cares? Like, I got what I wanted, so I'm good. Let people just live in their realities. Everything's fine. And Loki's like, no, it's not fine. You don't get it. Like, things are messing up. And then, of course, finding out that the Loom is going to do nothing but protect the sacred timeline anyway is something that, you know, we didn't find out until super late in the game. You know what I'm saying? So, Sylvie, we love you, girl, but yeah, first you need to hook up that hairstyle or something. Like, you gotta do something with that hairstyle, and stop being so pouty. You know what I'm saying? Other people should be able to, you know, get a little bit of love too. So stop all the hateration. Oh man, but we've been rolling for a minute. I'm gonna throw it to you. We did have a dope season. And it has proven that, in my opinion, that we are turning around in this fifth phase. Mr. HBCU Rugby, if you could give us your final thoughts and tell us where they can find you.
Yes. You know, I think you said it best. I think that Loki is going to be one of those marker points, like I said at the beginning too, that helps determine the direction of where MCU shows go. I think this was the first time I think we've had in total that it was a special event, 6-episode special event that felt like we got the value and it felt significant for 6 episodes. Like, from this point on, I truly hope that they stick back to the 8 to 10 episodes, maybe 18 like they want to do for Daredevil is a little much, but 8 to 10 episodes for a season feel like a TV show over and over. That being said, Loki, on my ranking of MCU shows, WandaVision has been almost unadulteratedly the best one for me since it came out, and I hadn't found anyone that really topped it for me personally. The Loki season 2 finally took it over. 3 years later, it finally took over the top spot for best show for the MCU. So I'm excited to see where the MCU is going to go. I love the fact that the changes that Kevin Feige now has been able to make, and now that he controls both comic books and the TV show, we're going to see a really big return back to storytelling as opposed to the formulaic version that they had to do to create mass production at the unfortunate cost of it'll probably take longer for us to see the product come together. So we're going to be, for you and I, we're going to be probably in our late 40s, early 50s by the time this phase era comes to an end, which will be weird in hindsight. But I'm happy for it. I'm glad Loki came. I'm glad that they were able to give us a breath of fresh air. And of course, if you guys want to find me, you can talk to me. I'm definitely much heavier on X than I ever thought I would be. At Gifte Bailu, but I'm either doing stuff with LSU football, rugby, HBCU rugby, or comic book movies, almost primarily, and Power Rangers as we get that reboot going on. And on Instagram, you can find me at Gift Time Rugby. On YouTube at Gift Time Rugby, we got Rugby Swag Show podcast going on, and then lastly on TikTok at Gift Time Rugby.
Ah, word up. Okay. Get your TikTok on. I ain't nothing wrong with that. So
we out here
doing your thing. So I guess final thoughts for me is that phase 5 is definitely shaping up to be a much more consistent phase than phase 4. And I was, after phase 4, I was like, yeah, we had a lot of ups and downs in that one. And it seemed like sort of like the rebuilding years of a team that, had just won a couple championships. So now with this phase, I think we've gotten more consistently good, or at least all right stuff. Like Ant-Man. I don't love Ant-Man, but I think Ant-Man is all right. And I think Ant-Man does a good job of starting to say, hey, this stuff is tied together. Similarly with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I don't think Guardians of the Galaxy 3 shows that a lot of this stuff is tied so much as it's a better movie than the second one, and it ties their story all together. So I enjoyed that one. And now, of course, with the Marvels, I enjoyed it. I know there's people out there but I enjoyed it. And it does a good job of saying that, hey, this is a universe where everybody is living in together. And then you add in Loki. I think we've been consistently, all right, like pretty cool. Like I would watch it again. I'm not rushing to it, but I would watch it again to like, oh, okay, I'm really happy with this. And in a way more consistent way than we had before. So I honestly think most of what we've gotten in phase 4 has been a lot more, a lot more enjoyable than it's been. So with Loki, I am glad to see where he ended. I'm excited for his character and happy for his character. And with that said, of course, holla at me, NERDSoul, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, podcast, all that jazz. And until the next time that you had to take the throne to help live and live for the multiverse, this is from us to you saying, peace.